You do not argue to understand. You argue to win. Disagreement feels like a threat to identity. Superiority complex ties self-worth to intellectual dominance. Being wrong feels humiliating rather than human, so you defend opinions aggressively, even when evidence shifts. Listening becomes selective. Curiosity disappears. Conversations turn into battlegrounds. Beneath this rigidity is fear. If you are not right, you feel small. Certainty becomes armor against insecurity. But growth requires flexibility. Intelligence is not proven by winning debates. It is revealed by the ability to revise oneself. When being right matters more than truth, connection quietly dies. You may appear polite, yet internally you judge. People seem slow, shallow, emotional, or naive. Superiority complex often hides behind silent comparison. You feel elevated by seeing flaws in others. This inner distancing creates a false sense of safety. If others are beneath you, then you cannot be threatened. Empathy weakens. Curiosity fades. Relationships feel unsatisfying because equality is missing. Contempt is not confidence. It is a shield against vulnerability. The cost is isolation. When you constantly look down, you lose the ability to truly meet anyone eye to eye. Apologies feel heavy. Explanations come easier than ownership. Superiority complex reframes errors as misunderstandings, exceptions, or someone else's fault. Accountability feels like collapse. So the ego protects itself through justification. This pattern blocks learning. Mistakes become something to hide rather than correct. Others feel unheard or blamed. Trust erodes quietly. Strength is not the absence of error. It is the willingness to face it. Admitting mistakes does not shrink you. It humanizes you. When humility enters, growth accelerates and relationships regain balance. You lean on credentials, labels, achievements to feel secure. Introductions matter too much. Recognition feels necessary. Superiority complex ties identity to external markers of importance. Without them, you feel invisible. Success becomes less about fulfillment and more about hierarchy. You measure worth through rank, money, influence, or admiration. This creates constant pressure to maintain an image. Rest feels unproductive. Simplicity feels threatening. Yet status never satisfies for long. There is always a higher rung. Peace arrives when worth is internal, not something displayed for proof. You dominate conversations without noticing. Your thoughts feel more important. Interruptions feel justified. Superiority complex convinces you that your perspective adds the most value. Listening becomes passive, waiting for your turn rather than absorbing meaning. This creates imbalance. Others feel unheard, unseen, slowly withdrawing. You may interpret their silence as agreement or inferiority, but it is often disengagement. Real influence comes from presence, not volume. Listening does not reduce your intelligence. It expands it. Wisdom grows when attention shifts outward. When curiosity replaces the need to impress, connection deepens. Jokes land with a sting. Sarcasm feels clever. You call it honesty or wit. Superiority complex hides behind humor to avoid accountability. If challenged, you accuse others of being too sensitive. This keeps power intact, but the emotional impact lingers. Humor that punches down reveals insecurity, not brilliance. Laughter becomes a tool to assert dominance. Over time, trust erodes. People guard themselves around you. True humor connects rather than wounds. It lifts without needing a target. When laughter requires someone smaller, it exposes a fragile ego seeking control. You grow irritated when others take time to understand. Repetition feels insulting. Superiority complex equates speed with intelligence, empathy with inefficiency. You forget that learning has rhythms. Impatience becomes moral judgment, labeling others as incompetent or lazy. This creates distance and resentment. Teaching turns into superiority display rather than support. Intelligence without patience isolates. True mastery simplifies without contempt. When you slow down to meet others, you do not lose power, you gain influence. Respect grows where understanding replaces irritation. You seek spaces where you shine and avoid those where you blend in. Superiority, complex fears, equality. Being average feels like erasure, so you curate environments that reinforce exceptional identity. This limits growth. Challenges are avoided. Learning plateaus. You mistake comfort for confidence. But real expansion happens when you are no longer special. Humility invites learning. Excellence deepens through exposure, not protection. Staying only where you dominate keeps the self inflated but fragile. Strength grows when you tolerate being ordinary while becoming better. You steer discussions, influence outcomes, and subtly dictate choices. Superiority complex equates leadership with authority, not collaboration. You fear being wrong or irrelevant, so control becomes a shield. Others' input feels optional or inconvenient. Decision-making turns into a display of dominance. You may mistake compliance for respect, but it breeds quiet resentment. Influence is not control. Power is not obedience. True leadership allows space for differing ideas. When you let go of the need to dominate outcomes, you discover trust, creativity, and relationships deepen. The mind that controls externally often trembles internally. Even gentle feedback feels personal. Suggestions trigger defensiveness. Superiority complex interprets critique as attack. Self-worth is tied to image rather than growth. Errors are threats, not opportunities. You justify, deflect, or minimize instead of listening. Learning stalls, relationships strain. The mind equates vulnerability with loss of control. Yet constructive criticism is a doorway to evolution. When feedback no longer threatens ego, the world opens. Openness replaces rigidity. The strongest personalities are those who can absorb insight without feeling diminished. Humility becomes strength rather than weakness. Praise, applause, acknowledgement, awards, or visibility fuel your sense of self. Superiority complex binds identity to external validation. Internal satisfaction feels incomplete. You compare recognition and feel anxious when unseen. Attention becomes currency. Absence of admiration triggers insecurity. Relationships skew transactional. You may overachieve or exaggerate contributions to secure acknowledgement. Yet fulfillment remains elusive. The irony is that self-worth never grows from outside affirmation. It blooms inwardly. When you detach from the applause, your work becomes genuine. Effort becomes joy rather than performance. Recognition feels natural, not necessary. When someone else succeeds, you minimize, rationalize, or ignore their accomplishments. Superiority complex perceives others' success as a threat to status. Comparison fuels subtle resentment. Admiration becomes difficult. Envy grows, disguised as indifference. You unconsciously protect self-image rather than celebrate others. Relationships lose warmth. You miss inspiration. The world appears competitive rather than collaborative. True confidence allows space for others' light. When you learn to rejoice in their growth, you expand your own. Humility does not shrink achievement. It magnifies joy. The mind that diminishes others diminishes itself. You define yourself by what you know or can do. Skills and intellect become shields. Superiority complex ties value to performance rather than character. Curiosity takes a backseat to display. Mistakes feel like threats. Learning becomes competitive, not exploratory. You judge those who struggle as lesser, forgetting that intelligence is only one aspect of being. Wisdom includes humility, kindness, and emotional insight. When identity depends on talent alone, it is fragile. Growth stagnates. Connection weakens. Letting your mind coexist with others without constant measurement transforms superiority into confidence and expertise into generosity rather than armor. Opening up feels dangerous. Emotions are hidden. Weaknesses are buried. Superiority complex equates exposure with risk of collapse. Vulnerability is avoided at all costs. Authentic connection suffers. Others sense distance. Trust struggles to form. Resilience is masked as perfection. The mind believes weakness invites exploitation. Yet human strength is paradoxically revealed in honesty and openness. Sharing fears and imperfections fosters empathy, intimacy, and personal growth. When hiding becomes habit, the self grows rigid. Letting vulnerability coexist with competence softens arrogance, strengthens bonds, and replaces fear with presence. The bravest acts are often invisible to the world. You notice flaws immediately, form opinions quickly, and categorize people in seconds. Superiority complex convinces you that assessment equals insight. Empathy is replaced by evaluation. Curiosity is eclipsed by ranking. This creates an inner hierarchy where few measure up. Relationships become transactional and surface level. Subtle disdain feels justified, yet judgment reflects the fragility of your own identity more than reality. When you pause and observe without assigning worth, you create space for understanding, connection, and learning. The quieter mind sees value without comparison. The confident mind accepts complexity. Superiority thrives in comparison. Humility thrives in presence. Mistakes are intolerable. Tasks must be flawless. Superiority complex equates perfection with legitimacy. You overwork to maintain image. Pride hides insecurity. Effort becomes obsession. Anxiety lurks beneath every action. The fear of being less than drives relentless standards. Relaxation feels dangerous. Imperfection unacceptably. Others are often measured by your own impossible bar, yet perfection is illusion. Human life is flawed and messy. Authenticity requires embracing mistakes, releasing control, and valuing intention over outcome. When striving shifts from proving superiority to cultivating skill and growth, the mind relaxes, creativity blossoms, and relationships deepen. Peace replaces pressure. Every decision, interaction, and achievement is filtered through the lens of maintaining superiority. The mind constantly scans for threats to image or position. Inferiority hides beneath the guise of dominance. Failure feels catastrophic, and success feels incomplete without visibility. You calculate, compare, and control to prevent perceived decline. Relationships and opportunities are often manipulated to reinforce rank. Yet, true confidence is resilient. It does not crumble when status shifts. Power is not external. It is internal. Security grows when self-worth is untethered from hierarchy. Letting go of fear opens space for genuine growth, connection, and influence beyond the fragile constructs of image. You avoid asking for guidance, advice, or support. Superiority complex equates dependence with weakness. Needing others feels like loss of control or exposure, so you shoulder burdens alone. Pride outweighs practicality, and collaboration is avoided. This isolates and exhausts, while subtle resentment simmers, yet seeking support is strength, not failure. Learning to accept help does not diminish your capability, it amplifies it. Humility and cooperation expand influence, relationships deepen, and energy multiplies. The mind that resists assistance is trapped in illusion. The confident mind leverages interdependence, balancing autonomy with connection. Compliments trigger discomfort. You deflect, minimize, or redirect admiration. Superiority complex convinces you that acceptance of praise implies vulnerability, imperfection, or expectation. Internal tension rises when acknowledgement lands. Gratitude feels foreign. Humility is performed rather than felt. Yet recognition is not a threat. It is feedback and appreciation. Embracing it strengthens identity, anchors self-esteem internally, and allows authentic presence. When you stop fearing the mirror of praise, you gain freedom. The mind no longer needs constant defense. Confidence and grace replace pretense. Interactions become lighter, relationships more genuine, and self-respect steadier. You maintain surface-level relationships, keep intimacy at a distance. Emotional connection feels risky. Superiority complex convinces you that revealing inner life exposes weakness. Vulnerability is avoided. Walls are built subtly but firmly. Others sense distance and pull back. Empathy is limited. Trust remains fragile. Meaningful connection suffers, yet human fulfillment thrives on shared emotion, authenticity, and presence. Letting down the guard does not diminish value. It enhances it. Depth arises. When the ego relaxes, when control gives way to curiosity, when superiority softens into equality. Love and understanding flourish. Relationships become spaces of growth, rather than arenas of display. A superiority complex is not true strength. It is a mask for hidden insecurity. A shield built to protect a fragile sense of self. It turns achievement, intelligence, and influence into armor while distancing the heart from authentic connection. Every sign, from defensiveness to perfectionism, points not to power but to fear of being small, flawed, or invisible. Awareness is the first step toward freedom. Noticing these patterns does not shame you. It illuminates where growth is possible. Real confidence does not need comparison, recognition, or control. It rests quietly in self-acceptance. Humility coexists with competence. Vulnerability coexists with strength. Influence coexists with openness. When the need to dominate or impress softens, relationships deepen. Joy expands, and identity stabilizes. The mind learns to thrive without validation, status, or perfection. Living fully requires releasing the mask and embracing the human self beneath it.